tell me a little bit about where you found Kara and Jared, because I just thought they were both so wonderful in the film, and as newcomers, I thought it was very important that they be newcomers, so that I had no preconceptions about them when I first saw them on the screen. Do you agree?
Yes. Well, I sort of approached it like wherever we can find them is fine with me, as long as they are great. Because I certainly knew we had a bunch of adult roles, but none of them are great big roles. And and even though we ended up with some movie stars in there, I just knew the movie it's still on the shoulders of these two kids, and there was no way it was going to be any other way. So I just made sure to set aside a lot of time to go through the process, and I sort of thought we just have to see. I feel like what ends up happening is you look at one after another, and you sort of find some that you think are okay, but eventually somebody comes in and the search is over. It's usually there's a flash of lightning, and there it is. And that's what happened with each of these. We looked at thousands, literally thousands of kids. Me looking at them almost all on quick times, sent to me by our casting director, Doug Abel. And in the case of Jared, after many months of searching, there was this kid who was not. It wasn't his audition that got me. It was he was fine in the audition. He made me laugh the way he looked, but it was the combination of his appearance and the interview between him and the casting director that was on the end of his audition tape that really entertained me and charmed me, and he just seemed. His voice and his manner and his enthusiasm were all very winning, and so anyway, that's what grabbed me about him. I had absolutely no preconception of what his character ought to look like, or really much of anything. And with her, it was her reading of the scene, which sounded to me completely as if she were inventing the lines herself spontaneously right there. And that's a very unusual thing to feel with a child actor reading cold something they've never seen before. She just walked in, just her way it seemed very authentic. So that was kind of that was how we found them.
Well, they both struck me as well to be. Obviously they're 11, 12, 13 years old, but they struck me as being old souls. And I know it's kind of a cliche, but they look wise beyond their years. And they look like people who have been around a little bit, even though they're 12. And that's the feeling.
Yeah. It's interesting. And also, Jared is quite different from his character in a lot of ways. He defines the character because of his voice and his behavior, but his actual attitude in life is very different from his character. He's much kind of lighter-hearted and not so intrepid.
Right.
But he has great charm. Kara, on the other hand, I think is very much like her character, and she's somebody who's a avid reader and very grown up, much more grown up than Jared, which is the common thing with their two 12-year-olds at that time. But the only thing I think she didn't quite share or feel she shared was her character's kind of anger, which she felt is not her. But she certainly, when called upon to drum it up, it seemed to be there. So I don't know if it was. I think maybe that's just acting, but it was hard to think that she didn't have some kind of fire going.
Yeah, so there's something boiling underneath the surface. Now, did the characters? I know you developed this for a long time. The idea of it, from what I've read, sort of kicked around for 8 or 10 years. Did the characters of the kids change at all once you met them, once they were cast? Were there any changes made to accommodate strengths or differences that they may have brought with them that were different than what was on the written page?
Well, I had been thinking about it for a long time, but I had really their characters per se only really existed. I had been trying to write the thing, and I had some different notions about it, but there were no characters until really until I started working with Roman Coppola on the script, which was only less than a year before we started shooting the movie. But anyway, what we did write, what I think is simultaneously very close to what they played, and yet doesn't have the detail of them. I think from what you would have read on the page, you would get their predicaments and their story, and you would get the idea of what the emotion is between them. But to me, what they bring to it is really almost entirely the characters' personalities, and it's so dependent on them. These two kids really define these guys.
Absolutely. Now, I was thinking later in the process, after I was thinking about the film, getting ready to write about it, of other movies that this movie reminded me of, or movies that I would like to go over and take out of my DVD collection and watch sort of as a companion piece. What movies, or if any, did you watch just to sort of put you in the mood?
Well, I had some movies that had sort of, in particular the Truffaut movie, Small Change, L'Argent de Poche. Do you know that one?
Mm-hmm, I do.
Which is a great movie and a favorite of mine, and that was something that many years ago made me. That was sort of what led me to start thinking about doing something with children as the leads. But there are a couple of movies that I discovered while I was working on the script, looking for inspirations and looking for ideas to help propel a story about a romance between characters of this age. And one of them is a great Ken Loach film called Black Jack, and one is called Melody, that is directed by Waris Hussein, which is from about 1970, I guess, English movie. And then another one is L'Enfance Nue, that's Maurice Pialat. Have you seen that one?
I haven't, no. I've seen Black Jack. That's the lunatic asylum movie, right? Where a young boy rescues a girl from a... Yeah, right.
That's the one, and I had never heard of it. I was just in a video store in London, and I saw the very beautiful cover. It's Ken Loach, and I didn't really know Ken Loach's work that well. I knew a few of the films, but then I read the description. I thought it seemed very interesting, and then I absolutely loved the movie. And then I later saw Kes, right, which is a much more popular, much better known one, which is also great. But Black Jack really made a huge impression on me. And inspired quite a bit. Sort of inspired some things in the movie.
It's interesting. I mean, that's a period piece as well. So this is a period piece of a sort. 1965. That is like 1800s or something. I think Blackjack.
Exactly. I think it may even be 1700s.
Really?
End of the 18th century. I'm not positive about it.
It's been
Yorkshire.
A while since I've seen it.
Yeah.
Well, tell me then about setting your film in 1965. I've read where you said it's the end of one kind of America, and there's definitely a feel in the film of sort of I don't know. It's not really otherworldliness. I grew up in a place not unlike where the movie's set, but in Canada, in a place in Nova Scotia that was remote and a real sort of an oasis all to itself, a place all to itself with where everyone knew one another, and it to me reminded me of this a lot. And the feel in the movie, the feel of the movie has the feel of the place that I grew up. The year I was 2 in 1965, don't remember, but I'm curious what you think about the end of One Kind of America. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think I sort of spontaneously decided to set it in 1965, but then as I was, I don't know why I had chosen that. Often I feel like I'm doing things without really knowing why I'm doing them, and then it's sort of revealing itself. And in this case, I started thinking, maybe the Scoutmaster would end up in Vietnam after this story, and that was something Edward Norton and I sort of discussed and had sort of as an idea that's where he's headed, and it made me think, well, if this is 1965, what is coming? This whole kind of upheaval in America, and the counterculture, and the end of this of what at least has the appearance of a certain kind of innocence, and that seemed to relate to the end of this childhood and the end of this summer, and then something happened while we were filming. I learned we were filming in Rhode Island, and the island where we did much of the filming. I learned that we were there. There's a house where we didn't end up filming, but we modeled some of our sets on this house that's on a rock in Narragansett Bay. And one of the guys in the house, the sons of the man who owned the house, told me that when he was a kid, he watched them build this suspension bridge that he was pointing to outside his window, suspension bridge that connected Jamestown to Newport, Rhode Island, and that he saw, which they began to build in 62 and finished in 65, if I remember correctly, and this place that they had been, where they had been for all these years, that had changed very little in the past century, changed so radically in the next 10 years and became a suburb of Newport with little shopping centers and, densely populated. And it had been a summer colony. So anyway, all of that sort of fed into this thing of a kind of Norman Rockwell America and the Boy Scouts that came to an end.